Welcome back to ESPN X TNC's World Cup preview special, and here we go, the Socceroos, the boxing kangaroos, as called by Graham Arnold in his press conference announcing his squad. Well, the squad is in. Andrew Redmayne, Matty Ryan, Danny Vukovic, Nathaniel Atkinson, Joel King, Aziz Bajic, Kai Rolls, Miloš Deganek, Harry Sutar, Thomas Deng, Bailey Wright, Fran Garicic, Keanu Bacchus, Jackson Irvine, Cammy Devlin, Riley McGree, Aidan Hrustic, Aaron Moy, Martin Boyle, Garen Kual, Matthew Leckie, Mitch Duke, Awal Mabil, Craig Goodwin, Jamie McLaren, and the cum dog has been capped, Jason Cummings. Now, Harrow, what was your immediate reaction when you saw that squad?
I was just glad that for once we had a national team squad and there was no controversy. No one was selected that shouldn't have been. No one missed out. No complaints.
Yes.
Just
peace and love in
tranquility.
Australian football. Just, yes.
And we've had a nice calm start to this segment as well with the shipping forecast. So, you know, thank you for that, Joey. I appreciate it.
You're very much welcome, Josh Parrish. Do you have anything constructive to add to
Absolutely not.
What do you expect?
Well, Harrow was, of course, being facetious. There was controversy even before the Socceroos squad was officially announced. Nobody got any drops. It wasn't sent out under embargo, but the leaks did come in the end. And the big one, well, it's not often that the backup goalkeeping position is the biggest controversy that comes out of a World Cup squad, but it was this time. Mitch Langarak, after setting clean sheet records, plural, in Japan over the past few seasons with Nagoya Grampus, being brought out of international retirement by Graham Arnold just 2 weeks ago, by request by Graham Arnold just 2 months ago, not in the squad. Harrow, what's your immediate reaction to that?
Stunning, wasn't it? I think when you read everyone's previews of this squad the day before, it's like, and the goalkeepers are a lock. There'll be Matt Ryan and there'll be Mitch Langarak and then Andrew Redmayne as the third goalkeeper vibes guy, right? Penalty shootout specialist, which clearly is something the Socceroos will need. But yeah, I think everyone had Mitch Langarak penciled in, not just as backup goalkeeper, but as an actual contender for number one, given his sensational season and, I mean, sustained brilliance in Japan. Matt Ryan, injury cloud, really struggling for a spot in his team in Copenhagen.
I mean, he's barely played for years.
He's barely played. So it seemed logical, right? And I think most people go with that rule with goalkeepers. When you've got three goalkeepers, your 1 and 2 should be really duking it out because you want that competitive balance. You want players to be at their best. And then the third guy is the vibes guy. You pick a good playlist. You be a good bloke around the locker room. You can be a penalty shootout specialist. Yeah, I think everyone was stunned. I don't think I've spoken to anyone who has said, no, this seems like the right decision.
Yeah, well, I think the most telling thing is Robbie Slater, who at times has used his Daily Telegraph column sort of as to give us an insight into Graham Arnold's thinking, said that this was about harmony and it's about creating an environment where there's not a challenge to the established starter. And what I found hilarious is the Socceroos have had like a 5-minute taste of what every Matilda's squad selection is like, and everyone's calling it out. It's fantastic. So more of this, please. If you see something that doesn't add up, speak out. And I think Aussie Scout, we talk about this guy quite a bit, he said today, you know, all three goalkeepers, Redmayne, Ryan and Vukovic, are Crawley proteges, John Crawley, the goalkeeping coach, from their time at Westfield Sports High, the Central Coast Mariners and Sydney FC, respectively. So, yes, there's an alignment here. Will that harmony get the best out of Matt Ryan? Maybe it will. As we know, Brad Jones came back for the 2018 World Cup. That was at the expense of Mitch Langarak. And again, I feel as though that was something that created a totally different harmony amongst the goalkeepers, but also the squad broadly, because Langarak had been seen as one of those guys that, you know, a lot of the people in the team respected. Tommy Orr spoke out quite extensively about it. End of the day, it is our backup goalkeeper, but you just know that we're going to see at least two of these goalkeepers on the field in this World Cup, whether it's by design because we concede a penalty at a time where Graham Arnold feels he can sub Andrew Redmayne on, or because Matt Ryan's injury is not going to hold up.
I think one of the biggest reasons we saw the furor surrounding it was just because one of the constant criticisms or accusations, I should say, as a better word, that has followed Graham Arnold around throughout his tenure is his predilection for picking people that he is familiar with. We saw after the last World Cup and into the Asian Cup, Josh Risdon moved out of the Socceroos team, Ryan Grant coming in, and there is that perception of playing favourites and the harmony sort of aspect of it, which, if you do look at it, from a footballing perspective, Mitch Langarak is absolutely in the 3 best options available to the Socceroos. So I can't think anybody that would argue that Mitch Langarak isn't one of the best 3 goalkeepers available to the Socceroos. And it's important to note that, nobody can blame Danny Vukovic for this. All he's done is picked up the phone call and been told that he's going to a World Cup. He's not going to turn it down based on principle. The heat is on John Crawley and Graham Arnold for making these decisions. As the coaches, as the selectors, they are the ones that should feel the heat from this. But I think it gets back to that root issue of wherein we are being seen to not pick the squad based upon the best available players. And you can sort of see that elsewhere, in that there has been, it is clear that there has been a general focus, I think, on picking players in form and that are playing regularly with their clubs. You only need to look at the midfield to really see that. Outside of Aiden Hrustic, who should have been there on one leg, basically everybody else is playing and seeing the field for their respective clubs. But then you've also got circumstances like Awan Mabil, who's barely seeing the field for Cadiz, even though based on talent, he's clearly there. But then there's also somebody like Joel King, who got the nod at left back, despite very rarely seeing the field, and others such as Jason Davidson moving to Europe and seeing the field a lot and playing centre back and left back as well. Callum Elder has been injured but has just been doing it week in and week out. So it's just, I guess, a lack of consistency in the messaging and the actual execution in the squad, Josh.
I think overall, the preference has been towards regular minutes. There are some exceptions, as you pointed out there.
And that's what's jarring.
Yeah, but I do wonder about the whole debate around minutes versus, the quality of the league that you're signed up in and the training sessions that you're in. Because Denny Genre, a great example, playing in Ligue 1. I mean, he's only played 47 minutes or something this campaign. But, a couple of guys playing for pretty low-ranked cinch premiership sides have made the cut. I guess that reflects the shorter turnaround time heading into this World Cup and potentially not having time for a Gus Hiddink style mini pre-season in the lead-up. So players who are rusty will be exposed. But yeah, the preference has been towards regular minutes, and I can see that with the way that Arnold wants to play, Australia being the battling boxing kangaroo underdog. It's a preference towards that physicality, and I understand the approach, even if I disagree with it in some aspects.
I mean, it was hinted at by Arnold in his press conference announcing the squad that this has been a team selected to perform to a certain function in Qatar. They're going to fight. They're not, and this has been a conversation we've been having surrounding the philosophical direction of the Socceroos throughout the entire qualification process. Do we want to fight and sort of drag teams down to our level and beat them with experience, or do we want to, our former colleague now living on an alien spaceship once wrote that there has never been any lack of faith in Australian players' effort. There's been a lack of faith in their actual footballing ability.
But just on that, the way the national teams talk about themselves is really grating. Like the part of, I listened to the full press conference. The thing that really annoyed me was when Arnold said, if I put Kai Rolls and Harry Suter in a boxing ring tomorrow, they'd be ready to go. Great. What about a football pitch? Yeah. No one cares if they can box tomorrow. And if that's just an analogy, who's it for? Why does the national team talk about it in that manner?
Siege mentality as well.
But this is Danny Vukovic's press conference, and I think Josh or Joey, one of you might have listened into that.
Joey was on that one.
Joey was there, right? So the world's out to get us thing. I mean, we've gone back to this numerous times. Ever since Sam Kerr said, suck on that one. Bailey Wright said, stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Why is it that our national teams make an enemy, and a straw man at that, out of the people who care the most about the team, which is the ones who care enough to watch? And thus, we watch, and that is how we make our criticisms. You have the entire AFL and NRL apparatus out there, and yet they need the fans of the team to be their motivation, to have a backs to the wall? Are you kidding me? I mean, why wouldn't you say Peter V'landys is out here trying to buy up all of New South Wales? The AFL is trying to get AFLW to undercut every junior sport in the country, and football's one of them. They're the enemy. Why doesn't that motivate you as opposed to they said Langarak should be in the squad over me?
And I think if you actually looked at most people's headlines or lead pars about these squads, it wasn't just Mitch Langarak wasn't there. It was, Wunderkind Garanquoil has been selected with teammate Jason Cummings. But Mitch Langarak has been left out. I think most people are looking, the first headline a lot of people have actually gone to. I mean, Mitch Langarak was the breaking news by Vince, right? So that's why a lot of people are talking about it. But when you actually looked at the squad as a whole, people were generally positive. Like, people, I think, said, Arnold made the tough call with leaving out his literal son-in-law in Trent Sainsbury. Made the call on Tom Rogic. He didn't, let past performances versus, not going to those other qualifiers play a role. He left him out. But I thought generally most lead pass from the media were, how good is this Garanquoil is going to be going to the World Cup, and Jason Cummings is going to be this sensational story of a career turnaround after being on the scrap heap in Scotland less than a year ago. So it's, the siege mentality. For me, sometimes when you do get that sort of response from a player or a coach, there's got to be a level of insecurity right? You've got to know at some point that there are people actually have a point to what they're saying. It's
just very wearing to think that this is what our national teams are going to be in perpetuity. It's, they're out to get us. No one believes in us, as TNC talked about in its most recent episode. We now need to prove them wrong. But who you're proving wrong are the people who care about the team the most, because they're the ones who care to watch. Like you had,
and that's the thing, Jay. It's like that. It's not like the questions that are being asked as a result of this squad, of which there are, as you point out, Anna, many positives that we'll get to talk about. But it's not like there's a fair and unfair or unreasonable questions that are being put to the national teams where it relates to selection. Like, the criteria was set by the manager himself that minutes matter, performances matter. These are the most important things. And as Joey said, that's for the most part been observed. But there are these just glaringly obvious exceptions to the rule, and for some reason, in the case of Mitch Langarak, when he's asked about that sort of thing, it's somehow not Graham Arnold's decision. It's the decision of the goalkeeper coach. Now, I found that a bit sort of...
but see, that's the 5-minute taste of what the Matildas have, because we have delegator-in-chief, abdicating his responsibility for who picks the team and X, Y,
but
Z.
it's not a choice.
So if we're having equality, why wouldn't the Socceroos do exactly the same thing?
But it's a recommendation. It's not a choice.
And look, he's right. At the end of the day, Graham Arnold is the national team coach, and it is his class. I don't think, talking about the negative media, I don't think it was unfair, the questions that were being asked either. I mean, look at Gareth Southgate is going to be absolutely hammered no matter what he does when he announces the England team. Go to South America. That is going to be poured over for hundreds of hours by hundreds of different media outlets.
So many pages in the paper.
There'll be completely analysis. I mean, it was remarkable that, yesterday Jason Cummings in his press conference was talking about how nice the Australian football media is, a bloke that has experienced the British footballing press and how awful they can be. So I don't think it was completely unfair. It also, I think, maybe came down to the way the squad was announced. There was no embargoed release to media. There was no briefing before the official announcement. There was just complete radio silence.
And news gets broken.
Yeah.
That is just how the media cycle works.
That was probably the result of all those last-minute phone calls to Christian Volpato. I mean, no, I'm being dead serious. If he's called him 3 times in the last 12 hours before the squad gets named, it's because they didn't have something to leak at that point, really.
Well, some things did leak. The Langarak news obviously leaks, and in a vacuum, with nothing else to fill
people react to.
Yeah, people react to, and that's what journalists report, because they're not under an embargo or anything like that. Not to get too full sounding board on this discussion and discuss the strategies.
Save it for the main body, Joey.
It's not about the media.
Yeah, it's not about
the squad.
I'm just trying to explain. But moving on to the squad, because
we are not the protagonists.
Yeah, we aren't the protagonists, and there is good news around this team. I mean, I'm very much a fan of Cameron Devlin. Getting a call up, as I said on social media. I'm shattered that Connor Metcalfe and Denny Jonro didn't. I can understand the reasoning behind why they didn't, even if I think that they could have made an impact, and they are in 26 of the most talented players this country has. But Very excited to see Cammy Devlin get his call up. Very excited to see Garang get his call up. Jason Cummings be rewarded for his good form. Graham Arnold said he would reward minutes and good form. The Cum Dog has been playing fantastic for the Mariners and gets his call up. But, Harrow?
I was just going to say, I like the Devlin selection because it feels like one where they sort of have conceded. Maybe we got it wrong. We weren't calling him up for quite a few windows there. He only very recently actually, got a proper call up, and they've gone, actually, yeah, this is the sort of player we're missing. This is the sort of player who's really having an impact. So I did like that. I felt like it was actually justified reward, and I think he's the sort of player we actually do miss. How many minutes he'll actually get, yet to be seen, but good player to have in that squad at least. But I think the positive story has to be Kowal and Cummings, and doesn't it? Like bolts from the blue, really, in terms of that past year. They're exciting. They're players that I think if you're a non-football fan, you can get behind. Like good stories, good players. They're exciting. They combine well. They can both offer impacts. I mean, Kowal's going to be a super sub. I think we all know that. And it's interesting, so much talk about he's going to go to a World Cup without even starting an A-League men game. But for me, that doesn't matter because he's not going to the World Cup to start. So he's shown he can do that role so well in his senior football. And that's the role that he's going to have at this, tender age of his career. I just think it's fantastic.
I mean, not only is he not going to start, but I feel like there have been many times already in this short but eventful journey of Garang Kuol where people have raised the question, is he up to the level of doing X? And when he made the journey up to the national team for the first time, people were asking, will he be capable? When he was selected as, I think, a commissioner's pick in the A-League All-Stars, people were thinking, has he shown enough? But really, every challenge that has been thrown up to this guy so far, he's taken with both hands. So I actually think he's worked out enough credit in the bank at this point where we have to stop asking the question of, is he capable?
Admittedly, he won't be running at Storm Roo at the World Cup like he was in his Socceroos debut, but it is going to be interesting to watch.
No, but then he had a pretty impressive performance against Barcelona. Yes, was it a makeshift Barcelona in its off-season? Sure, but he has, every time a challenge has been thrown up to him, he has proven himself up to the task. And look, I know intangibles only count for so much in football, but that confidence will count for something if Australia, or when Australia, need a spark off the bench.
Apologies for the drive-by on Storm Roo, by the way. I'm just simply saying that I think he'd agree with me that he's probably not getting in the French national team anytime soon, but I'm aware of time.
He's got a French surname, so
Really?
he might be eligible.
Indeed. What I might do is I might go down the line. Give me your starting 11 for the first game against France.
Starting with me, okay. Ryan obviously starts. Atkinson right back, Bache left back. The two central defenders. Now, this is a tough one. The heart's bias within me wants to say that Kai Rolls gets a start. He did make
Quick
his...
segment's a good segment, Lockie.
He did get his first 90 minutes overnight against Rangers, so I will say that. Suter and Degenek, midfield three. It's my midfield three, not everyone else's. Devlin, Irvine, and Hrustic. And then a front three of Mobile, Boyle, and Jason Cummings.
I think, in terms of prediction rather than a preference...
Yeah, this is predictions.
I think Moy is a lock to start. I also think Mitch Duke might start against France, which I think is a terrible idea. I don't think Duke will get touch. If he starts against France, he'll barely be involved. That's obviously an exaggeration, but when you're playing against a team who's going to completely dominate the ball against you, why would you want a target man who's only effective attacking the box? Potentially against Tunisia, Duke is a great option because Australia will be higher up the pitch.
They'll have the ball.
They'll have the ball a lot more. Tunisia will sit a lot deeper and Duke can attack crosses. But against a side where you're under the pump and you need someone who can break the line in behind or hold the ball up and wait for the team to advance and lay it off to a midfielder, McLaren and Cummings are both better options. So I think Duke might start, but I think if he does, it's a terrible mistake.
You haven't given us your team.
Well, am I going to read the whole thing? I think it'll be Mobile, Boyle, Duke, Moy, Irvine, Hrustic, fitness permitting, Sutar again, fitness permitting, I think Bailey Wright might start because he was in that qualifier. So
he was in the qualifier and he's the only one starting 90 minutes week in and week out in the lead.
I think he might get the nod at right back. It'll probably be Atkinson. Bajic is basically a lock and then Ryan between the sticks.
I was going to say pretty similar. I wouldn't want to start Mitch Duke either, but I think he will. This is not a slander of Mitch Duke in any way. I just think the way that they're going to play.
was a slander of Mitch Duke.
Wow, cop that.
Hi, Mitch. Leave us a like and a retweet.
He has qualities and he's got limitations.
Actually, make it a quote tweet telling us what you think of Josh Parrish.
One thing I do wonder is with Mabil's lack of game time, if Arnie winds back the clock just a little bit and goes for Matt Leckie, who has been in really, really good form for Melbourne City. I think he's more likely to stick to a bit of tried and true, that front three, Duke, Boyle. Again, these fitness queries add a bit to me, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's either Degnek or Wright with Sutar. I think Arnie will want Sutar in there straight away if he's fit. It sounds like he did well in his first team match for Stoke when he came back. Matt Ryan obviously in goal. I think Bayich is a lock at left back. He'll probably go for Atkinson at right back. The centre-backs, I'd love to see Tommy Dang. Hopefully he gets a bit of game time in the group matches, but I don't think it'll be against France, unfortunately, because I think he's great. I think it'll probably be either Wright or Degnek with Sutar, and then I think the midfield three is a lock, pending fitness, with Moy, Irvine, and Rustic. Front three, probably, Duke, Boyle, and one of Mabil or Leckie, maybe.
Midfield three, I think, is a lock. I'd agree with you, Moy, Irvine, and Rustic, pending fitness. I think you're on the right track with the Leckie stuff. I've been thinking about,
hasn't he?
well, and especially thinking about it over the past 24 hours. I think Leckie does start against France because he's playing for Melbourne City, so he'll press and he'll do the defensive work as well. And in fact, I actually think we might see a Melbourne City inspired front three. I think Leckie, McLaren, and Boyle up front, because those three will run and they will press. And
they'll finish. They're finishers as well. That's the thing. Mitch Duke isn't as much of a finisher, I think. I think Jamie McLaren is the most natural finisher
and
of the team.
if you're running out of front...
I mean, it's a bit optimistic. I mean, what's our XG really going to be in this game?
Well, we're just...
Teo, let us have fun.
Teo, let us fantasy book. And it's also...
This is the negative media we're talking about.
If you're running out of front three
Holding us
of
back.
Mabil, McLaren or Duke and Boyle, no World Cup experience there. There's nobody that's...
I'm actually all in now on our Leckie, McLaren and Boyle front three, Joey. The Melbourne Mafia is coming big.
I don't mind the
I haven't
idea
given
of...
my defence yet.
More
Teo.
hang on.
No, I wanna
More
go back to
Victorians.
your point about Deng, does anyone actually think that's realistic if Atkinson isn't the starting right back?
He can play there. We've seen it.
I think
But I think Karacic would.
Karacic has the inside running. But yeah, I think the front three will be Leckie, McLaren and Boyle. The back four... So I think Bayich and Atkinson start. I think they're locked in alongside Ryan behind them. I think Sutar starts. I think Kyrol starts. I think Graham Arnold...
Boxing Kangaroos.
Absolutely loves Kyrell. I mean, Kyrell started in the playoffs and he's played more first-team senior football than Sutar in the build-up to the World Cup. So I absolutely think that Graham Arnold not only sees Sutar and Rouse as the centre-back pairing for the next decade, I think he sees them as his centre-back pairing for this World Cup.
I will just throw in again that he did play 90 against Rangers and, albeit in a loss, played quite well this morning. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen either.
And Teo, give us your starting line.
No, same as Josh.
Same as Josh?
Okay. I just want to know which French player Matt Leckie's going to square up to if he starts. Who's going to be...
This is why Adam Peacock is actually the biggest villain in Australian football, because he had Matthew Leckie on his podcast and he debunked the fight me CUN something gif of him against the Netherlands. And it was like worse than finding out the Santa Claus.
Who knows if Leckie was telling the truth?
Family man.
Yeah.
He's a family man. Maybe he doesn't want his kids to know they drop C-bombs.
I want to know which French player, because it was Lucas Hernandez last World Cup who became the villain, the pantomime villain for Australia. So I want to know which French player we're all going to have their face on a dartboard after this.
Benzema, like mental disintegration surrounding his court case.
No, I think it has to be due to perceived cheating, not just...
Yeah, we like to be slighted. We need a villain. We need
Mbappe.
a Grosso.
Just call him the golden ball.
Seconding
Someone
Mbappe.
has to dive and
Yeah.
Also, knowing Australia's predilection for a bit of tall poppy syndrome, Mbappe being the tallest of the poppies, I think he'll be the one that
They'll upset Mbappe so much that he'll take his week's earnings and buy the entire A-League men.
Are we certain that France are going to play their strongest 11 in this opening game, given the short turnaround times, given they will have a 7-game strategy to win the tournament?
Okay, yeah, not to be a downer, but do they need to?
No, but that's my question. As in terms of who we pick to prepare, do we put any consideration at all into who France might actually pick in this game?
I think Didier Deschamps plays the same system, even if he doesn't play the same
I
personnel.
mean, they certainly could, but I wonder, we'll get to talk about them later, but given the very rough lead-in they've had to this tournament, the absentees, the form, the off-field stuff, I think they might be doing so at their peril. Maybe. Maybe.
Well, Socceroos, it's going to be interesting. We'll get to the rest of the group in a little bit. We'll take a little bit of a quick break now, but you're watching the ESPN X TNC World Cup special preview.